lost voices of the founders. Well, voice recordings of Blavatsky, Olcott and Judge, that really would be something for the Theosophical movement. I've always been aware that some recordings were made back in 1878 and they're mentioned in old diary leaves, but my interest in the subject has been prompted by an article in the January 1946 edition of the Theosophist, and this is an item in response to an inquiry on the subject. It's entitled Historic Records. What has become of the gramophone records of the founders' voices made in New York just before they left for India? Asked a correspondent who has been reading in the 1937 International Theosophical Yearbook that on the 15th of December 1878 such records were taken on an Edison machine. As Edison had joined the Theosophical Society in that year and was in the thick of inventions, he himself may have taken the records. Has any movement ever been made to find these historical records? If not, why not put the New York Lodge or Wheaton on the track of it? It may be in the archives of Edison's people, perhaps the Edison Bell Company. Now the answer to the query is given. The answer is given by H.S. Olcott in old diary leaves. I had bought an Edison phonograph of the original pattern, and on that evening, 2 days before they sailed for India, quite a number of our members and friends, among them a Mr. Johnson, whom Edison had sent as his personal representative, he being unavoidably absent, talked into the voice receiver messages to our then known and unknown brothers in India. The several tinfoil sheets properly marked for identification were carefully removed from the cylinder, packed up, and they are still kept in the Adyar Library for the edification of future times. Among the voices kept are those of H.P.B., a very sharp and clear record, myself, Mr. Judge and his brother John, Professor Alex Wilder, Miss Sarah Cowell, two Messrs. Laffan, Mr. Clough, Mr. D.A. Curtis, Mr. Griggs, Mrs. S.R. Wells and Mrs. and Miss Amer, Dr. J.A. Weiss, Mr. Shin, Mr. Terris, Mr. Maynard, Mr. E.H. Johnston, Mr. O'Donovan, who made the HPB medallion, etc., of whom all were clever and some very well known as authors, journalists, painters, sculptors, musicians, and in other ways. 17 years later, when making up his story for old diary leaves, the Colonel added this note. Quite recently, in May 1895, I sent these tinfoil records to Edison's London office to see if they might not be received on one of the modern wax cylinders and so saved for posterity. Unfortunately, nothing could be done with them, the indentations made by the voices having become almost flattened out. It is a great pity, for otherwise we might have had duplicates taken of the original and thus have had H.P.B.'s strong voice speaking audibly at our local meetings all over the world on White Lotus Day, the anniversary of her death. Now, that was written in 1895, and the question I would ask now, one, do these recordings still exist somewhere? And the other question I would ask is, can modern technology, if they do exist, can modern technology recover the voices? We live in an age of heroic data recovery, so it may be possible that some very old recordings could be revived. Okay, that's an open question.